Hi, everybody. My name is Eric Riley, and I am a librarian and a pagan here in Washington, D.C. And over the weekend, there were some very joking and erroneous statements made about Wicca. And I'm here to try to set some of that straight. Um, on the show, Fox and Friends, and on a few other things that happened on the Fox News channel over that weekend, there were statements made, particularly by Tucker Carlson, about Wicca having like all these crazy amounts of holidays. Don't really understand like why there are all these holidays. He made the claim that there were like 20 holidays in Wicca, and in fact there are not 20 holidays in Wicca. There are 8, and it is actually not very confusing. It is very straightforward, and I'm going to explain them to you today. So, we live on the planet Earth, and the Earth has 4 seasons, and that's a very important thing to know when you start to look at the Wiccan calendar, because the holidays are spaced to coincide with the beginning, middle, and end of each of the seasons. So, since we have 4 seasons, that means that they are divided into quarters on the solstices and the equinoxes, which mark the beginning of those transitions of the seasons. And then in the Wiccan calendar, we mark the middle of each of those seasons as we pass from a rising to a waning part of that season. So we have quarters, which are the solstices and the equinoxes, and cross quarters, which are the midpoints in the seasons. Now, that's 8, right? So, all right, so let's kind of go down through the wheel of the year. This is what we call it. And I will explain what each of these holidays is very briefly, and hopefully it will make sense to you. And you will probably see some jarring similarities between holidays that are celebrated in other religious traditions, particularly in Christian traditions, and some things that happen secularly that have kind of carried over from pagan traditions. I'll just kind of touch on them briefly. All right, so the wheel of the year. Let's start on December 21st. This is the winter solstice and the beginning of winter, official beginning of winter. Maybe colder before then, but the reality is that we mark the changing of the seasons on the solstices and the equinoxes. So December 21st is Yule. And on Yule, you will see a lot of the same sorts of traditions that you would see in secular Christmas and in Christian Christmas, except for there's no Jesus in a manger, that sort of thing. It's about trees and light and fire and things like that. So Yule is the darkest time in the year because it is the shortest day in the year, and it is the longest night. So in that moment of utter darkness, Wicca tries to bring back life and light to the earth. So this is why we have evergreen trees in Yule celebrations, because evergreen trees are still alive in the middle of winter. And this is why we pull things like mistletoe and holly and ivy, because these things are still green, deep, deep green, and are sometimes fruiting even, mistletoe especially, in the beginning of winter. So we burn Yule logs all night long to make up for the light that the sun isn't giving us, because the sun is further away. Well, it's not further away, it's just at a different axial tilt away from us. So we are further away from it. That's Yule, all right? Bringing back light and life to the earth. All right, so we tick down the calendar and we go 6 weeks in. And so all of these are at 6-week intervals, pretty much, right? So 6 weeks in, we're at February 2nd, and this is the holiday known as Imbolc. It is a celebration of light, and as many of these things are agrarian in nature, they have to do with farming and farm life. The holiday really kind of centers around the lactation of animals. So over the course of the winter, your food supplies are starting to run short, but you have these animals that are giving birth and that are, lactating, and so this is the opportunity for you to start milking these animals, making cheeses, doing things to kind of stretch that food supply over the end of winter as you move towards the spring. All right. Now, there's also kind of a symbiotic relationship in the Catholic calendar to Saint Bridget and Santa Lucia around that time as well, and so this is also sometimes called Candlemas. It is oftentimes when you would recognize Bridget, who in pagan traditions is seen as a goddess and not necessarily as a person who lived and was a saint. Okay, so let's move on. And we are now at the spring equinox, which we call Ostara. That word may sound very familiar to you because it is from the Old English, and this is where we derive the word Easter from. So this is a celebration of fertility. This is the beginning of springtime. This is life rushing back into the earth. So you may have wondered why at Easter, when we're talking about the resurrection of Christ in some places, why all of the stores are filled with chocolate rabbits and eggs and colorful things like that, and it's because that's a pagan tradition. Those things have been around, March hares, for a very, very long time, and they continue to persist in our culture, and it's great for sales as well. So, the spring equinox, Ostara, it's about the beginning of springtime, the rush to life. Now, we get to one of the biggest holidays. There's two really major ones, and this is one of the biggest ones. This is the biggest one in the lighter half of the year, and that is Beltane. Beltane is on May 1st, May Day, and this is a celebration of the height of springtime, right? Everything's fresh, everything's new, there's pollen flying everywhere, and there's animals mating, so we bring out this maypole and we stick it in the ground, and there's streamers flying all out of it, and beautiful people dance in and out around each other and give each other nodding winks, and it's all about the connection, the sexual fertility aspect of bringing life back to the earth. So, you take a pole, you stick it in a hole, some things flow out of the top of it. I think you get where this is going. Alright. So, next we have the summer solstice, June 21st, and this is called Litha. This marks the brightest day of the year, the longest day of the year, shortest night. It's also sometimes called midsummer, even though it's the beginning of summer. And in Scandinavian traditions, which kind of bleed into, Wicca kind of borrowed from a lot of places, but Scandinavian traditions, this is when they would begin marching out their midsummer pole, where in warmer climates we would have done it 6 weeks earlier. But Scandinavia being what it is, they bring it out later in the year because their Earth is not quite thought out yet. So, on the summer solstice, this is a big time of celebration. All these are big times of celebration. But this particular one marks the beginning of the transition into the darker half of the year. And so, it's this one last big hurrah, before we start to get into, the beginnings of the harvest cycle. All right. So the next three holidays all kind of flow into each other, and we get back into this agrarian lifestyle and mindset. So August 1st is Lunasa. This is an Irish Gaelic term. It comes from the god Lu, who is one of the Tuatha De Danann, an Irish pantheon that existed prior to the introduction of Christianity. And this particular holiday is the harvest of grains. And so around this time, August 1st or so, is when you would go out into the fields with your sickles and your scythes, and you would take down all of the wheat and all of the barley and all of the oats and things like that that you've let grow up over the summer. Because this is the time when things are starting to go kind of that beautiful golden brown, and you want to get it before the rain starts to come in and ruin your crops, because you want to have that grain to last you through the winter. So on Lunasa Lammas, the loaf mass, again, this is kind of a Catholicism thing that was kind of borrowed into Wicca, you would celebrate with feasts of grains, breads and cakes and cookies and things like that. And sometimes there's like, straw men and things like that that you would, hack away at. John Barleycorn is one of those things that you would see around Lunasa. There's also lots of dancing. All these fall holidays, as we get into the fall, are all very dance oriented. All right, so the fall equinox, September 20th, 22nd, is called Mabon, and this is the harvest of fruit. All right, so this is the beginning of fall. All of the fruiting trees have, like big, luscious, pendulous fruit, and so you're just going to be climbing up there, getting all that stuff down, putting it into barrels, pressing it into wines and ciders and all of that stuff. So the Feast of Fruits. So all of these things are being stored away and stocked away in silos and granaries and barrels full of things, and sawdust filling barrels of apples and things like that. Bobbing for apples is one of those things that would happen around Mabon. It's a good time for that, though there's a lot more wine at that time. All right, and then we come to the last, and probably, I would say, maybe the biggest holiday in the Wiccan calendar, which is Samhain. Now, this, yes, does fall on October 31st, but really, the secular traditions that have kind of grown up around this are kind of just echoes of what Samhain really is about. So, this is a time when Wiccans take to honoring their dead and their ancestors, and they remember the names, they remember their lives, they tell stories about their beloved family members who are no longer with them, and they make foods that honor their ancestors and where they came from. And, this is another one of those things. It's a very dark time of the year. And agriculturally, this is the Feast of Flesh. It is the time when you would slaughter animals and butcher them for the winter. So, hogs, cows, things like that. All of them at that time of year, they, get butchered and hung to dry and cure, so that you have grains, fruits, and meats to last you through the entirety of the winter. And that's a long period of time. That's like, 3 months, maybe more, depending on how rough the winter is and whether or not you're able to get out there and get stuff. So this is a very solemn occasion because this is the last of the agricultural cycle, and it's the farewell to flesh things. So I know that term carnival, farewell to the flesh, carnevale, from Latin, is something that happens, Mardi Gras. But really in the Wiccan calendar, it is that last act that you do of butchering those animals and putting them into your barns to preserve you and your life during the winter. So, on Samhain, Wiccans believe that the veil between the living and the dead is at its thinnest. It is an opportunity for you to actually speak to, commune with, and perhaps even have them speak back to you, your beloved ancestors. And so, Halloween, in all its like candy and costumes and all of that stuff, is not really what's happening in the Wiccan calendar. I mean, yes, a lot of Wiccans get caught up in the secular Halloween. I will perfectly well admit that I have a pointy hat. And I buy tons of candy, but I'm also fat, so I like to have the candy in myself anyways, just for me, and the kids. But on that night, I go out, and I personally I've been keeping a list of names of deceased people from the LGBTQ community, and I recite those names every year, and that list just gets bigger and bigger every single year. And for me, it's an opportunity to remember the lives of these people who did so much for me, and for other queer people. And everybody's different. Everybody has different lives and loves and families and heroes. And this is the time that they are honored. Not that you don't do it at other times of the year, but that's the big one, and that's why it's important. It's not because it's Halloween; it's because we have a respect for life, and that respect for life passes into afterlife, and we honor those people, and we love and remember them. So that's the wheel of the year, and it's not that confusing. It's solstices, equinoxes, cross quarter points, 8 holidays, one every 6 weeks. And honestly, we don't usually take them off from work. Except if there's like something serious, like if there's like a ritual going to be happening, or if there is going to be a service to honor people, or other things like that, then maybe we might take off from work, or want to leave school early, because we might have to get ready uh, for something, just like you would go to church, But I mean, 8 days out of the year, at times when most things are probably already out anyways, on spring breaks and Easters and Christmas breaks and all of that, and 4th of July, and who knows, there's all kinds of things that are already happening secularly in our country, in the Christian calendar. There's all these other holidays that have led to secular holidays. This is not an unusual request, and oftentimes it's not even requested. It's just something that we do, and you can take it or leave it. So I hope that that was helpful for you, and I know that it was helpful for me to get it out. But if you do have any questions, feel free to leave your questions in the comments on this YouTube video. And I hope, Tucker Carlson, that you watch this. Thank you.